Good morning, guys. It's been a couple of days since we had a vlog, and that is because I have been working on all of this stuff here. You might recognize, if you've been watching the other channel, these Star Wars animations. So I'm working on those, and also an animated version of the Doctor Who reviews. So that took all of yesterday, because I decided, well, the Doctor Who reviews, they're going to need a TARDIS console for the character to stand in while they look at the screen and talk. Oh, dear. TARDISes are far more complicated to draw than the background in Star Trek, which is mainly just like a grey-black, kind of warm grey background with a few buttons on here and there. Oh my goodness, it took ages. So anyway, I've got that done, and now I get to animate it. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, animation. I've had a few people say, how did you do that? That looks great. And I'm going to let you in on a secret. It's hardly any movement at all, only a couple of bits change. So I'm going to walk you through it. I'm just going to point the camera at the screen for this. It's going to make it much easier for me to actually talk to you about than trying to faff about moving everything around. So we've got the characters here. We've got Kirk and Spock, and you might notice Kirk's looking that way, Spock's looking that way. Well, I can change that very quickly. Now Spock is looking in the same direction as Kirk. That is due to this layer here, called Spock Eyes 2. And all that layer is, if I take out Spock, it's a set of eyeballs with a little bit of skin tone around him, because that way it covers up where his eyes were looking in the previous thing. You'll also notice Spock is not within the background. I can take the background out entirely, or I can just turn it into black and white. That's all I drew for the background. This makes it much easier. I can then put I can then put Spock and Kirk onto a planet if I wanted to put a planet background in. Spock would still be sitting down and have to change his base pose, but that's not really much of a problem, because it just requires me to redraw pretty much everything from about there downward, and that would be so easy to do. So I can do that kind of thing. It's just all done with overlays. I want to have Spock talk. He's got 3 different mouth positions, same as Kirk. So closed, slightly open, and fully open. That's all I did for those. So all 3 of those are, they're processed out with the 3 variants that Kirk has as well. I can do whatever shape I want for him. And that means I've got about 6 in total poses of Spock looking left and right while talking. 3 looking left, 3 looking right. That's all it is. The same with Kirk, 3 looking to the right, 3 looking to the left. And then a combination, Kirk looking one way, Spock looking the other, Kirk mouth open, Spock mouth open, and things like that. All of those were then processed out as individual images. Once the images are processed out from Photoshop, I then load up iMovie. That's going to load in a second. iMovie can... Originally, it used to be able to cut down to 0.2 seconds worth of a frame. And that would be very, very good, because you could get really good animations. These days, you can cut down to 0.4 seconds. It's not quite as good, but it will work for the limited animation style that I'm using here. So, I've got those 6 panels with Spock looking left and Spock looking right while talking. How do I turn them into speech? It's very, very simple. I'm going to walk you through it now, but it basically comes down to, I put a 0.4 second frame of the Spock with his mouth open image into a video. And then I put a 0.4 second frame of Spock with his mouth slightly open into the video straight after it. Then I copy both of those and just run them in a line until I've got a minute's worth of footage of Spock going blah, 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 never closing his mouth. It's very important that he never closes his mouth for this. Process that out. I've now got a 1080p image, because I draw the entire thing in 1080p. A 1080p image of Spock going blah, 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 blah. And his eyes will be looking in one direction, Kirk will be looking in whatever direction, and then I'll swap it around with Kirk looking the other way. Kirk's mouth always closed, because Kirk will not be speaking while Spock's speaking for the most part. And it's important that you only have a minute of that footage, because I'll tell you this straight off, very, very important. If you have a minute of the character speaking and nothing else happening, you need to think about what you're doing with your animation. So I make it a minute long because that way I've got enough footage that if I want to speed it up or slow it down or do anything sort of effects with it, I can do that. But it won't go over the boredom threshold, basically. I try to keep it down to take 10, 15, 30 seconds at most, but a minute absolute maximum. So let's have a look at how you put that together. So here we are with all of the various frames that I've got, and you can see there straight away I've got different mouths and eyes on each of the characters, and there it is, all in a line. All of those are 0.4 seconds, making up just over a minute. So as I've said before, if I press space, you'll see that it's just Spock opening his mouth and closing his mouth a little bit, but not fully. So that's great if he's just talking. What do I do if he's actually being quiet and he stopped talking for a little bit, like a pause in a breath? Well, here's the image of him where he's not speaking, his mouth's closed. So if I just pull that in over the top, and let's cut it after a few frames and take that off. Right, well, now what happens is if I run this back a little bit, so there, and press space, then we look up here, you'll see that he just talks for a little bit and then stops. And then starts again. And that's all it is. I just overlay the frame of him not speaking. So why have I got a minute here? Well, that's because I'm going to process that out, and that will become a minute of footage. That means that I don't have to animate that again. I've got a stock thing of Spock talking, looking in a certain direction, and Kirk not talking, looking in a certain direction. I'll then switch it over so that Kirk is looking in a different direction, using all of the pieces that I've got there, with all the different frames, and then I'll render that out and I'll have stock footage of Kirk looking the other way while Spock talks. And then I'll do the same with Spock not talking and Kirk looking in both directions and Spock looking in both directions. Then I've got all of the stock footage I need. And again, this technique of overlaying that blank piece where he's not talking at all, I can do that at any point once that's rendered out into a minute of footage for each version of that frame. Which means I can now pretty much just have the character say whatever I want as a voiceover, stick it into that footage, and I've got an animated piece. That's how I'm doing the show so quickly. And that's the thing to remember with this stuff. It's not about being a slacker or reusing footage because it's cheap or anything like that. It's efficiency. I could animate each frame individually. In fact, I did that for the first episode. The review of Star Trek the Motion Picture is hand animated with each frame put in place where it needs to be, and it took too long. It's a really long and laborious process, but the effect that I've got with just having the stock speaking animations doesn't actually change anything. So why not do it this way? That's the thing. So that's what I'm doing, and it's working out rather well, and I'm very happy with how efficient it's become. So I can now pretty much crank out a Star Trek review and a Doctor Who review every week, and that's what I want to do. It makes the channel so much more efficient and doesn't change the overall quality of what was effectively always going to be a limited animation video. And that is how you do it. It's working efficiently, working smartly, and not having to redo things that you don't need to redo. And here's what I mean about the Doctor Who animation being more complicated. See all of these? They're the different parts of the time rotor animation. So if I bring it up here, the time rotor goes up and down and up and down and up and down. It's on a green screen because it's got to be overlaid using green screening onto whatever animation I'm using. This animation is actually 4 minutes long and it's processing out at the moment. That's because this is only the first part of it. I've got to overlay onto this, which I can't do when I'm putting the green screen on. I've got to overlay the front of the console onto it, otherwise that will go up and down in front of the console on the animation. And while I'm doing that, I will speed up the animation to the point where it's only about a minute long. So that'll be quite useful. And again, it's a minute long because I don't want it to go over anything else. And also, just to show that I can, I've put Dizzy into these animation frames. So the console's there, Dizzy's behind it, and then the background's behind Dizzy. That's just 3 layers. The console at the front is the first layer, Dizzy's the second layer, the background is the third layer, and that's black because it's actually empty. I can put whatever I want in there, same as on the little displays on the console itself. As you can see here, I can just turn off all the various bits, the control panel overlay, the time rotor itself. There's just the console. Time rotor goes over the console a little bit, so I put the overlay on top and then you can't see that. And of course I can turn Dizzy on and off, who is behind the console. Not a huge amount of them, because it would be a waste of time to draw it. And also I can turn the background on and off, and as you can see there is a background bit there. And it's just how it works. It works out very nicely, and everything just fits in. So you get the finished product, multiple layers. That's an extra image there that I can change. That's an extra image that I can change. That's an extra image I can change. And it all means that I can animate all the little monitors and make any part of this as fun as I want, which is really, really useful. So this is what I'm talking about when I say that I add in the bit where basically he's got his mouth closed afterwards, after I've animated the speech bit with just the flapping mouth. You can see any time that there's a drop in any of the speech, so there's nothing going on, or in the case of this bit here, where actually there is a drop in speech, but he's saying in as if he's got his teeth together. I've put in a closed mouth there too. Then it just makes it look like he's actually speaking. So let's have a quick look at what we've got.
Okay, now let's hop in. We're going back to the 80s.
See, now I've just got to sort it out so that the mouth flaps actually fit with the closed mouth in exactly the right places, and you can see what's going on. And also, I put a little gif of a time vortex into the corner there, just to give it a bit more to it. I haven't put anything in these two these two monitors here, because this is just an example. It's a very quick thing, about 4 seconds long, but it'll work. Now, once I've got the mouth flaps all sorted out, I think this is the only one that really needs moving, but perhaps that one as well. Then I add in this bit here, which is the time rotor, and we'll overlay that on, and then that will process out and we'll have the finished product. So I'll add that here.
Okay, nerds, hop in. We're going back to the 80s.
If you liked today's video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And an extra special thanks goes out to Chief89 and Tepic. Thank you.